Okay, we should be good now.
Okay. Okay, this is the Harbor Plan Update Committee. It is Monday, December 9th. We just did a roll call. And we have a quorum with 5 members present. The one item on the agenda that we've approved is to discuss the draft of the harbor plan. And so, Emily, do you maybe before we start, I don't know if everybody got it or not. I did not get the link until I emailed Kim this morning. She sent it to me, so I did have a chance to look at it. I don't know how many pages it's probably got, more than 50 pages.
I think it's so close to 100, maybe over.
Okay. I guess I don't know if this is a reasonable request, but I would love to have a hard copy of it. I mean, I just find it really hard to sort of go through this, online, but I don't know if other people feel the same way. I know Jeff or one of you
I
guys
can print you a copy.
printed out the copy of the 2009 plan when we first got together. And so is that something, now can you do that for each of the members?
I can do that.
Is that, I mean, I guess if somebody does not want that, that just saves Tara one more person to do it for, but I would like to have it. I don't know, anybody else have comments on that? Peter?
I'm all set.
You don't need it?
No, I just look at it over.
Okay.
Multiple devices.
Emily?
I think I'll be okay with the online version. If I really want a hard copy, I can ask or make one. But
Okay.
thank you.
Rebecca? Rachel? Do you want a hard copy?
Thanks, I think I'm good. Thank you, though.
Okay. Steve?
I'm okay with it online, electronically.
Okay, well, if you can do one, I'll come by and pick it up.
Okay, I'll make one for you and
Just
Linda.
let me know and I'll swing by and pick it up. A lot of good graphics, Kim.
There are a lot of graphics, but ideally, as I mentioned in the email, I would love to put more pictures in it and just make it, if the public is looking at it or whoever, just make it look, just nice.
Has everybody received it from Kim, or was I the only person that didn't get it?
I sent it out, it should have been Monday, December 2nd.
I did receive it. I unfortunately have not had as much time as I would like to go through it thoroughly yet, but I've been starting to look at it.
Yeah,
I received it as well, but I too haven't completely really reviewed it. I've reviewed portions of it and it looks great. It's amazing, but not entirely.
Yeah, I've got a copy, but I haven't dug into it in detail too much yet, just because it's been a little crazy busy for me lately, but.
Peter, did you get a copy?
Got it, and I haven't really looked at it.
I only had one comment. I mean, I'm really not, I'm not in a position to say, page 5, let's change this or something like that. But one overall thought I had, we could talk about it, is, Kim, you have under each of these recommendations, you have, what's the term, interested parties or
responsible parties. Yep.
Responsible parties. And it seems to me that for each of those, there ought to be a responsible party who is sort of with an asterisk or in bold. I mean, otherwise you're gonna have everybody kind of look, well, I'm not that responsible for it, because maybe if we can decide in our editing process who the quarterback should be for each of those, then maybe we can have a conversation with those individuals and say, you've got items on page, 5, 10, 25, and 30 that you are the, we're looking to for leadership on this and,
Mhm.
so that they're put on notice that something's expected of them. Otherwise, I think if we don't do that, I think that, we run the risk of, nobody really, taking ownership of any of that.
Yeah. Nope, I agree. And I should have noted in the email, with the responsible parties, we're definitely going to need to go to all them. And, feel free to edit those as much as possible. We were the ones that were just coming up with them. So a lot of those might need to be edited, but, I should have noted in the email that, we'll need to go back to them, we'll need to check with them. And, I agree that they'll have to agree to be the lead on doing that. Yes.
I think it's a bit of a balancing act, because if you have too many supposed responsible parties, it really gets diluted,
Mhm.
but you don't want to leave people out also. So, I mean, I think for each individual recommendation, we need to think about how that balance would work out.
I agree. So yeah, when you're doing your review, which, we know it's long, and it is 122 pages as I just opened it up. We know it's long, so it's gonna take some time for people to review it. So no, no need to feel bad that you haven't had a chance to look at it. It's quite, lengthy.
Kim, how would you like to have comments? Do you want people to send you back track changes, or how, I mean, I
Yeah.
think that it might be worthwhile if somebody has a comment on something to, to send around their, updated version with track changes, rather than, waiting for yet another, bi-weekly meeting.
I agree. I think the best way to do it would be to go into the Word document and have people do track changes, make comments, provide any edits you'd like to, just, make sure the track changes is on. And I think that would be, so everybody kind of did that individually. And then on our end, we'll combine all of those comments and edits. And, some of the comments maybe we need to discuss as a group, and we can kind of identify which ones, so some might just be, change this, change that, and that's easy. But if there are maybe controversial ones that we want to talk about, we can make a list of those and talk about those at the next meeting.
I mean, I would think for the meetings, the meetings going forward should be to discuss things that are, I don't know whether controversial is too strong a
Right.
term, whether there are different views on something, rather than just, an edit or a typo or something like that. Or if somebody thinks it should be in there or shouldn't be in there, or more emphasis or whatever, that's the kind of thing, I guess, Kim, you're kind of the scorekeeper to decide, okay, this is one we need to talk about.
Yeah. I agree. I don't think we have to worry about, small edits here and there, but more the bigger things where maybe people had different opinions on something. And then
Well-
that's what we'll talk about at the next meeting.
So I guess the idea is that in between Christmas shopping and everything else, if people can chip away at this and send to Kim their thoughts, comments, edits, or whatever, we can just kind of move this ball along.
Yeah. And looking at the calendar, we're at the 9th. The next, if we're doing bi-weekly meetings, the next meeting would be the 23rd, which I'm guessing, and then the next would be the 30th. And I'm guessing people are just going to be off. So we might want to, this potentially could give you guys some time, maybe have the next meeting January 6th, and that will give you, and you can send me your comments whenever, and then I can take the time to go through and make those edits or pull those comments together. But at a January 6th meeting, maybe we can, dive into that and if people can just make sure they get me their I'll come up with the date, like with enough time to be able to actually pull them together. So something like January 2nd or around then.
That's something people feel they can spend a little bit of time on before January 6th.
Easily.
Yep.
Definitely.
Is it, do you have, Kim, do you have like a broad timeline at this point about like when you would want to get, I guess, would it be a final draft for public review? Is that the next step after we make all our comments and everything?
Yeah, so it would be a final draft for public review, which if we're thinking, January 2nd, we have all that together.
January.
I can likely work to pull that together the next week or two, so maybe by the end of January, we'd have a final draft for public review and kind of start that whole process. We'll have a public meeting to discuss that. And Jack, I can't remember how many days do they have for public? I want to say it's 60. Is that correct?
Yeah, 60. It's probably even 30 to 60 or
30,
something like
60,
that. Yeah.
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 So after we have a public meeting for them, then they have up to 60 days, say, to make comments.
Something like that. And they've been pretty
Yeah.
good about that. Especially with Steve McKenna's involvement early on. I think we've probably, he's aware of what's in the plan. So he hasn't raised any particular concerns, and that's usually the thing that they do. I mean, part of that public review, I think too, Kim, you alluded to, it needs to be putting the recommendations in front of some of the other boards and committees who are going to be responsible for them. And it would be, we did this last time, but it would be unfair to have some recommendations that say the Concom is responsible for it that they haven't seen yet.
Right.
And so before this gets approved by anybody, I think each one of these boards, committees, staffs needs to look at this. And we did this with the town administrator already on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, at least for initial cut. And it was very useful.
Mhm.
So we'll get comments back from those boards and committees about the language that the recommendation has in it, or whether they think it's even conceivable that they could do that, or they might have a different suggestion. And the importance of that is that we want the recommendations to be implementable. So the fact that we have a little buy-in from the board or committee that's supposed to be doing it would be helpful.
Yep. Yeah, and I wonder if, before it's actually public, if we want to go to the responsible parties first, so that they're not feeling, so they have a heads up and can tell us yes, no, before it goes actually public. What do people think of that?
I think that's a great idea, and I don't necessarily want to put this on you. It's a lot of work, but it seems as though as we're maybe suggesting any changes or edits to those responsible parties, it would be helpful to just create like almost a master list or spreadsheet somehow, so that for those boards, like the Conservation Commission, there could sort of be an easy to find list of which recommendations they're tied to, just to
Yep.
make sure that they actually see all of them, the different entities, and that could go for all the different departments or boards.
Yep.
Mhm.
Do you think it's probably too early? We probably want your review before we go to the responsible parties. Do you think that would be the right order?
Probably. I mean, I don't know what others think, but that way, if somebody on the committee has an idea of why someone should or shouldn't be responsible for it.
I'm not sure time-wise whether it hurts to let them get a heads up, get a head start on it too with the holidays and everything. Time getting bunched up and everything. I mean, we've been through most of these recommendations and most of this stuff pretty thoroughly, I think. So if they have comments, we could be tweaked when we're doing our stuff simultaneously, save time. If everybody else thinks that's okay.
I think it does. I think the other thing a lot of these boards, committees meet once a month. And so we
Hmm.
probably need to give them an opportunity for two bites at the apple, because, you know, if the first agenda is all jammed up the second month, so I think that although we're talking 60 days, if we, you know, for some committee or something, it may be that they only have one meeting where they fall into that 60-day slot.
That's true.
Of course, we could just make NP and EDC responsible for everything since they didn't send us.
Okay, yeah, so I mean, I can give them a head start by sending this out, you know, this week, if that makes sense to people. You know, with really highlighting, I might pull, maybe what I would do is send the whole draft plan, but then send an additional document that just pulls out the recommendations that we were thinking they could be involved in, and then see if they, just so we make
Yeah.
sure that it's targeted and they know what they're looking at. They can kind of say
That would be great,
yes or
Kim.
no. Okay.
So back to my, question about scheduling, then we go through the 60-day period. Is the state involved in that 60-day period, Jack? And then after that, it goes to the select board and then,
Select board first and then the state.
okay.
The state doesn't want to review something that the town hasn't approved.
Okay, so we wait 60 days, then we go to this, then that's, we're basically a final draft to present to the select board.
Yes.
Okay.
And and keep in mind, Steve, that while it sounds like then the state might come back with comments, we'll be dealing with that up front. So as the plan is presented to the select board for approval, we'll know what the state feels about it at that point. You know, we can't determine that the state won't say something, but we'll try to make sure that that's minimized before the selectmen approve anything.
So it's probably April or May that before this thing's gonna be ready to go to the select board, I would think. Does that sound right?
Probably.
Probably.
And then we're running in a town meeting kind of
Right.
conflicts too.
Yeah, they're probably not gonna even want to look at this thing till after town meeting. Come to think of it.
Anything else, Kim, we should be thinking about?
I don't think so. I mean, just send me your comments as they, as you've gone through this and looked at it, and I can send a meeting invite for the 6th. And at that point, we can go through any comments that seem like we should talk about. And I'll reach out to the responsible parties. Yeah, otherwise, and I guess the other question would be, and I don't know who this is for, but with the responsible parties, I don't know if I'm asking them, we want to have a lead. Who is the right lead? I don't know if people are going to want to raise their hand for that.
Well, I think that as the committee reviews, we have, in most cases, there's multiple staff or committees that are listed there. And I think you can assume that we believe that the first one listed is the lead. And certainly if you don't agree with that, mark that so that we have the right lead at least.
Jim, is there anything you want to talk about now with the group that when you were doing the draft, you really didn't know what to do, or you really wanted some guidance or something that we could just kick around right now? I mean, was there something where you just said,
Oh, yeah, there were actually a couple things, as we were putting the draft together. There is some significant overlap between some of the sections, specifically water quality and natural resources. And I think it's Jack's section, commercial waterfront, and then boating and navigation, and wondering, this isn't something that we have to answer right now, but as you're going through it, thinking about that, thinking about if there are some sections we should be combining and condensing. And that would be fine to do. We just, don't want to be too repetitive, but also want to make sure that we're calling, like, every section gets as much attention as it needs.
The other thing that's come up is that in a lot of cases that we've made a recommendation about the town continuing to do something that it's already doing. And I will be interested in your reaction to whether that's necessary or not. So as you're reading through it and you keep coming to things like that and saying, the town already does this well, there's really no reason why we would need to be saying that. So if that occurs to you, let us know that as well.
Mhm.
There was a couple specific things I had, Kim, that I want to draw people's attention to. And
Yep.
one of them, it's too bad that David Franzuto's not here because he was sort of the lead on it. And one of them had to do with the harbor master. During committee meetings, we were talking about recommending that the harbor master be returned to an independent entity. And that was the original recommendation, I think, that you all saw. And then as we talked with Sheila more, we got the understanding that there was a transition going on already, that they had removed her from the union, had created a deputy harbor master position, and the chief felt things were moving in the right direction. And so we made an allusion to that in another recommendation. That recommendation now doesn't refer to that at all, making the harbor master an independent entity. What it talks about is assessing the departments and committees that exercise or influence management decisions over harbor operations and investments to improve coordination, efficiency, and outcomes. To simplify that, I think we've moved away from this plan, making the recommendation that the harbor master become independent. There was some concern that that was a town administration question, not for this committee, that the town would decide how best to organize itself. But we did occur to us that there are decisions on dredging, for example, that are being made by another department that's really not engaging with the harbor master. And so that there seems like there's a number of committees or staff that have decision-making authority over harbor-related things. I'm talking in-water harbor-related things that are not necessarily coordinating. So that's how the recommendation reads today. You all may want to go back to continuing to suggest the harbor master become an independent entity, but as it evolved, we moved away from that as a recommendation. That's not to say that that's our recommendation. That's just the way, as we gathered input, it seemed like that was the more prudent thing to say. So when you see that recommendation, it won't say what you thought it was going to say, but we can bring that back. Another one came
Jack,
up.
it looks like Steve has a
Steve,
question.
yep, sorry.
Well, my initial reaction to that is it's all well and good that things may be quote unquote on their way to separating things, but that can change any time. And if we drop the language that we think it should happen, then that's not part of the document. That's just my 2 cents.
Well, that's exactly what we want to hear, because it's really your call, not ours. We're gathering information as we hear different things. We're trying to reflect that, but ultimately it's the committee's decision on how any of these recommendations are going to read. So that's good to hear, Steve. I mean, it's good to hear your input on that.
I would love to revisit this when Dave is here.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when we did this the first time earlier on months ago with the committee, Dave wasn't at that meeting either. So he hasn't been part of the evolution of this recommendation at all. And he had some strong feelings about it.
So maybe we can make a note to bring this specific question back up when he is here, if that's okay.
Yep.
Emily, did you have
That
something?
came up had to do with the embarkation fee. We had made the recommendation that the town support legislation to allow the embarkation fee to be increased. And I think I had seen in the newspaper in going back maybe a year or more that the select board wasn't really necessarily in favor of doing that. I don't know if that's their current position or not. But we had put in that the committee was recommending that the town should support such a thing, and that the money, at least some of that money, would go to harbor improvement related investments. And so two questions. One, does the committee support does the committee support an increase in the embarkation fee? And remember, what we're talking about is a legislative change first, and then the town would have to vote that. So does the committee support that? And then secondly, the assumption that some of this money would then be used for harbor improvements. And the reason I mention that, because the transportation plan suggests that any increase in the embarkation fee would go to transportation improvements. I think landside transportation improvements.
I would support, the fact that, some of this money gets directed towards the harbor. And I don't think we should be necessarily concerned of pleasing the select board or not pleasing the select board. We have our own thoughts, our own recommendations, and we disagree with the select board on a lot of things already, so individually and collectively, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
So that was a recommendation from the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board to this committee to, we supported an increase. I know that's one of Dave's big things.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, the recommendation does read that. Now, I was just pointing out something, that there is some conflicting opinions on it within the town, not within the committee per se.
Emily, were you asking a question?
Oh, I was actually just gonna sort of echo Steve's thoughts on the last point about leaving the recommendation in, even if something is kind of in process. And I guess my initial thought is that as far as the elements go that really speak to continuing something that may already be happening, I mean, unless it makes it overburdensome and way too long, I think that it's kind of nice to have those things in there again, because if this is like a 5 or 10-year plan, it just memorializes the fact that we think those things are important and should remain priorities.
Agreed.
Agree.
Very good. That helps us a lot.
Mhm. Anything else on that, Jack? Any other questions?
But one thing I think would be useful, Kim, is there's a lot of sections that recommend educational material be prepared. And I think that's one of the things that Kim was referring to, where there's some repetition there. And we were thinking that we would try to gather all of those recommendations together, because there's a strong push for educating the public about a number of these things. And some of this educational material exists already, some of it doesn't. And that gets a little confusing, I think, as you're going through the plan. So we were thinking we might collapse that into suggesting that maybe the Harbor Plan Implementation Committee or something deal with that as a whole, rather than there's educational material on boating and navigation and wetlands protection and public access and you name it. And maybe that ought to be handled more in a coordinated manner, or at least as a recommendation. So that's something else that we were toying with here.
One thing that caught my eye, Kim, I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but something that caught my eye as I was skimming through it was, it looks like there's been a dramatic decrease in the nitrogen level in the last 10 years. And I was looking for some reasonings for why that was the case. And maybe it was in there and I didn't see it, but I thought, this is what we've been talking about, forever. And is it something that we've been doing good that is showing positive impact, or what?
To be teased out.
What's that?
We still have to tease it all out.
But I mean, the graph was dramatic from 10 or 12 years ago down to where we are now.
Yeah, I don't know. Emily, do you have any thoughts on that too?
I haven't actually looked at the figure that you're referring to, but so I'm not exactly sure which data you're referring to, but I
There
imagine.
was pension level on an annual basis, and it was a couple of graphs. And
It might have to do with when the total maximum daily load was established, where we were required to stay below a certain level. I also have not looked at the graph yet, so I need to take a
okay,
look.
because I mean, it talked a little bit about, well, it bumped up in the months of, June, July, August, whatever, but I think net, it was something that I know when I was on the Shellfish Association, I mean, we talked about it every month. And yeah, there it is right there.
So it looks like there was a big spike in 2012 and then it's kind of come down to a certain degree, or I guess at least remained kind of stable. 2018 went down a bit.
The oysters, does the oyster farming affect that?
It can, you have to have a lot of oysters to really make a difference, but yeah, I think it, like in combination with other things that are happening, I think it's helpful.
Well, I guess I certainly think that in the final version, we should, beat our own drum or do whatever, to highlight that there has been a dramatic change in not that long ago.
It's interesting, Kim has up the Matticat Harbor follows kind of a similar pattern. I mean, I think an annual average nitrogen concentration kind of, there's a lot in an annual average single number for the whole harbors. So I think Tara's right, there might be a bit to sort of tease out of there before we try to like tell that story, but yeah, we should definitely look at that.
Yeah, it is interesting that just that bump, same bump in 2012. Unclear exactly why.
Is there anything else, Kim, we should talk about today before we let everybody go?
No, just you'll see throughout the document that we've highlighted areas with questions. So also pay particular attention to those areas, and hopefully you can help fill in some of our questions.
And so I guess we can just do like some either track changes, suggestions, or stick some comments in a
Yep.
copy for you. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
And I just thinking back to like the responsible parties piece and getting started with giving this to some of the boards and departments to take a look at. It's probably possible to circle back a little later after we all meet again with them to say, oh, and by the way, we'd like you to take the lead on these particular items. If we don't know what that is yet, I'm sure we can address that with them as we go.
Yep, that makes sense.
Well, is there anything else, Kim, or members of the committee we should discuss before we adjourn? Do I have a motion?
My motion, adjournment.
A second?
Second,
Second by Steve. All in favor, Peter,
Aye.
Rachel,
Aye.
Steve,
aye.
Emily,
Aye.
and the chair says aye. We're adjourned. Okay, thank you very much, Kim.
Yeah, and thank you guys. This has been a good process, a long process. I know we've had to go through a lot kind of one by one. So thank you guys all for your help with that. And I'm excited that we're getting closer to this actually being finalized.
Yeah, thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank
Okay,
you.
It's a lot.
good work.
Happy holidays,
Okay,
everybody.
thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Steve.
Have a happy
Bye.
holiday.